We're going live. Yeah. Are we live? Oh, good morning, everybody. Normally I would go through the agenda. I will be doing that after we come back. We've had some late submissions, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting to 10:30.
Hello? Oh.
I beg your pardon. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting to 10:30 so the bench can read the late submissions. Once that's done, we will restart the meeting again at 10:30 as we would have done at 10 o'clock. Is there any other advice from the clerk to me before I go offline?
Can I just remember all participants that anything said will be live streamed to the public?
Did you hear that?
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, can we
Ben,
just
is there
confirm
any other
there is...
advice you wish to give? Ben, Mr. Gold, any other advice you wish to give before
Thank
I
you,
go off?
Chairman. No, nothing more from me. I think it's prudent that members do read those late submissions and then we re-adjourn, as you said, 10:30, Chairman.
Chairman, can we just confirm who attended the meeting by telephone as you were speaking? Someone attended. It would be just useful to know who that is because it's just a number on the screen.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Anyone who comes in by telephone, please confirm who you are because we only just get your number.
Yes, Chairman, it's PC Jason Pierce because I've clicked on the link sent to me. I've done numerous Teams meetings before. I've clicked on the link, but it didn't let me into the meeting via Teams. So I've had to come back this way, and I've been asking for another link that will let me in, but it's a simple process, but it's not working for me. So hopefully we can get that sorted out in the next 15
Right,
minutes.
well, what we're going to do, we're going to adjourn to 10:30. Hopefully we will have sorted out all these gremlins by then. And then we will go forward from there. So okay. I'm going offline now. Thank you.
Kev? Hello.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Housekeeping. Mobile phones need to be switched off. The two councillors who will be with me today on licensing committee are Councillor Beston and Councillor Howe. We also have a number of officers present who are Marie Bartlett, the clerk, Ben Gard, legal officer, Claire Thomason, licensing officer, Kevin Winchcombe, I beg your pardon, Kevin, licensing team manager, Matthew Northwood, environmental health. I will now move to the agenda. To approve the minutes meeting held on the 1st of June 2020. Can I have that proposed and seconded, please?
Happy to second that, Chairman. Councillor Beston.
Proposed and seconded. Thank you very much. Do I have any declarations of interest? I take it there's none. Is there any urgent business from the clerk? Mrs. Bartlett? No urgent business. Now we move to the agenda item 4 to determine the application for the premise licences under section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 of Harbour House Esplanade Ride. We have the following people in attendance, as I understand. Lee Hart, Carl Harding, PC Bradley, PC Jason Pierce, PC Julian Ainsworth. Is that correct, Mr. Gard?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we do also now have Mr. Craig present for the applicant, but otherwise, yes, I think we have PC Pierce who's representing the police. I think it's only PC Pierce, but I could be wrong on that. But yes, Chairman, I understand that we are all present.
Okay. Mr. Gard, can I ask you to read out to the no parties have the absolute right, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Of course. I'm Ben Gard, legal advisor to committee this morning, and just to confirm that no party has the absolute right to cross-examine any other party at these proceedings. This hearing shall take the form of a discussion led by the authority, and cross-examination shall not be permitted unless the authority considers that it is required for it to properly determine the representation's application or notice. An equal maximum period of time will be given to the parties in which to present their case and provide any further information considered relevant to the application or to the promotion of the licensing objectives. Persons speaking can amplify their original representations. However, any new evidence that does not form part of their representation may not be taken into account. Thank you, Chairman. I believe that is the procedure for today.
Thank you, Mr. Guard. Does everybody attending this morning understand the procedures of this hearing? If you don't, would you please indicate? As I understand, there's no one present that doesn't understand the proceedings. I would invite the licensing officer to summarise the report. Claire Thomas, would you please summarise your report? And good morning to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so Miss Lee Hyatt has applied for a new premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003 for Harbour House Esplanade Ride. These premises are already licensed to sell alcohol and provide entertainment. The current licence can be found at Appendix 2 of the committee report. The main differences between what is authorised and what has been proposed, I've actually created a document which, bear with me 1 second, I'll just see if I can share my screen here. Okay. Hopefully you should be able to see that.
I've got it, Claire, yes. Has all members got this?
Thank you, Chairman. I can see it.
I
great.
can, yes, I've got visual.
So the table below.
Please, can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we're with you, Claire.
Great. So the items highlighted in red are the main differences between this application for a new licence to what is currently authorised by the current premises licence. It should be noted that the Live Music Act 2012 outlines various exemptions for providing entertainment, and therefore the live and recorded music can be provided inside and outside between 8 AM and 2300 hours without needing to be specified on the licence if there's alcohol being sold and a certain number of people on the premises, which is less than 200 or 500. So in this instance, due to the capacity of the premises, any live recorded music before 11 is likely to be unlicensable. If issues were to arise from such entertainment, a review of the licence could be sought in order to regulate these activities. So the committee might just want to bear that in mind with this proposed operating schedule. The steps proposed by the applicant to ensure the licensing objectives are promoted are detailed in section M of the application, which is at Appendix 1 of the committee report. During the statutory 28-day consultation period, representations were received from police and environmental health as responsible authorities, as well as 8 other persons who are local residents. Police have objected to this application as they have concerns about how the premises have been operating in recent months and have received numerous complaints in this regard. They therefore believe that the extended hours for activities in this application would not uphold the licensing objectives. Police have not proposed any modifications to the application. However, the conditions that have been circulated have been run by the police. They will be able to confirm their views on those shortly, but the full representations that were submitted during the consultation period and subsequently can be found at Appendices 3 and 4 of the committee report, and police are here today to expand on those if needed. Environmental health have raised concerns, which are at Appendix 5, regarding noise from people and music in the outdoor area of the premises. They've also been liaising with the applicant regarding measures they could implement to address these concerns. Matt Northard is available today to address the subcommittee regarding the current position of environmental health on those measures. Local residents have concerns that granting this application would lead to nuisance, disorder and issues of public safety. The full details of their concerns can be found at Appendix 6, where they explain the issues they are experiencing with the current licence in operation. There is at least one resident here today who is available to speak if the committee wish to, or if she wishes to speak. Other residents have confirmed they're not able to attend today, but obviously would like their representations to remain in place. I'd like to draw the subcommittee's attention to paragraph 49 of my report, where I have clarified that the COVID-19 pandemic is a matter of public safety and not, a matter of public health, and not necessarily doesn't necessarily come under the objective of public safety. So that is something the committee needs to be aware of this morning. I would also like to clarify that this is an application for a new licence and not a variation of the current premises licence. As there is already a licence in place for these premises, although concerns have been raised regarding how the premises currently operate, no review of that licence has been sought at this point, and therefore the subcommittee may believe it to be disproportionate to reject the application entirely due to the fact that there is already a licence in place authorising activities. The subcommittee are required to determine this application for a premises licence today, as stated in section 9.38 of the National Guidance. They must have a view to promoting the licensing objectives. They must have regard to the National Guidance, the steps outlined by the applicant in their application, the representations heard, the overall National Guidance and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. The licensing objectives, just to remind everybody, are the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, public safety and the protection of children from harm. The options available to the subcommittee today are: they may grant the licence as per the application, they may grant the licence with modifications such as reducing the hours for activities or attaching any conditional conditions as they deem proportionate to the concerns raised, or they may reject the application entirely. Obviously, if there's any questions, then I am here to answer those, but that's it for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire Thomas. Before I go over to Western Councillor Howe, I would ask, have you taken in consideration the late representations?
Councillor Beston, yes, I have, Chairman.
And yourself, Councillor Howe?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chairman.
Right. Claire Thomas, do you have any comment on the late representations?
No comment to make, Chair, other than it would be, I would advise the committee to discuss with Environmental Health and Police when they give their representations as to what their current position is now in light of those additional steps the applicant has put forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beston, do you have any questions to Claire Thomas?
No, Chairman.
Councillor Howard, do you have any questions, Claire Thomas?
Not at this moment in time, Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Card, are there any points you wish to make at this point to Claire Thomas?
Not specifically to Claire Thomas, Chairman, but if I may, I don't think Mr. Craig or PC Pierce were present when I said my bit earlier, so I'd just like to repeat that again, Chairman, if I can, and that is that members of this committee have received the very late representations this morning. When the time comes to hear from responsible authorities and the applicant, it would be helpful, I would suggest, for members to be informed as to the responsible authorities and the applicant's position on the late conditions we've been provided with, and also with some commentary on the photographs that we've been provided with, including whether their recommendations change. And I think that it would be prudent to hear from the applicant and the responsible authorities at the relevant time, Chairman. It can be taken when they present, just specifically also in relation to this late evidence that we have received. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gard. I move forward now to the applicant, which is Who is speaking for the applicant? Is it Duncan Craig, or is Lee Hyatt or Carl Hyding speaking?
So Duncan.
A gentleman, I can't hear you. Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Harding, are you speaking, or is Duncan Craig speaking for you?
I think, Chairman, that it's Mr. Craig who's speaking, and it looks like he might be on mute in the sidebar here. So I wonder whether we could, through committee admin, unmute that number if that is the number in 7300, and bring Mr. Craig into the discussion.
You don't have access to unmute.
I'm just speaking with my clerk. We don't have access to unmute.
Okay, so it's something that Mr. Craig, who will be able to hear us, has done at his end.
Well, I'm right. Mr. Hyatt, are you going to present your case to me this morning, to the bench?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Yeah, it's about the late.
Sorry, Lee, I do apologise, Lee. You refer to you as Mr. Mrs. I do apologise. Are you presenting the case as your solicitor doesn't seem to be able to present his case for you?
Duncan's presenting the case. He's not on mute. He said he's there. I've got him on text.
Okay,
Mr. Guard, this is becoming impossible. I will give it one more go. Duncan Craig, could you please present the case for Mrs. Lee Hyatt and Carl Harding?
He's unmuted. He must be. He's trying to talk back. He's trying to talk back to you. Maybe this was a technical issue he wanted to talk to you about. I'm not on mute, he's saying.
right, okay. Chairman, I just wonder whether it's worth hearing from committee admin about, just to confirm that it's not our end that has muted.
I'm going to bring Marie Bartlett in on this, and I can assure you it's not our end.
I'm quite sure it's not, yeah.
Ms. Bartlett.
Can we take a couple of minutes? Could Mr. Craig dial out and dial back in on the same number, and hopefully that will restore. From our end, it looks like he's muted, but I'm wondering whether or not if he hangs up and tries to dial in again,
Okay.
whether or not that might help. So if we can give him a couple of minutes in order to do that, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right.
I think that's prudent just to have a
I'm going
pause.
to give Mr. Duncan Gray a couple of minutes to redial in. In other words, to reset his equipment. Hopefully that will bring him in. Is that permissible, Mr. Guard?
Yes, Chairman. I've seen that he's just disconnected. Mr. Craig has just disconnected from the meeting, so hopefully he'll be dialing back in. I think that it's prudent to allow him to make the representations on behalf of the applicant, and hopefully he'll be joining us shortly.
Okay.
Hello, can I be heard?
Hello, Mr. Craig, you can be heard. Welcome back to the meeting.
Mr. Craig, good morning to you.
Good morning, Chair.
Are you hearing me?
I am, thank you.
Good morning. Would you like to present your case, please?
I will indeed. I just want to start with, I've had possibly the worst morning I can remember, working morning I can remember in a long time. Just want to explain a bit of a background about these documents that have been sent over just before the hearing, because I think it's important. I don't want in any way this to reflect on my client's position or anything that she's done, because that would be grossly unfair. And I suppose to that extent, I must take some responsibility for this. But the position is this. I spoke to my client in the middle of last week about the application and the nature of the representations, and I said to her I felt that there needed to be some further conditions, and so she and I and the DPS had some back and forth with that for a day or so, and arrived at the position broadly speaking, in terms of what you see before you today, in terms of the proposed conditions and the dispersals policy. Obviously, it's not a straightforward thing because there's commercial considerations to take into account as well. I then emailed Environmental Health and Hampshire Constabulary on Thursday, spoke to Environmental Health on Friday morning, didn't have any response from Hampshire Constabulary, chased that up, found an alternative email address. Anyway, eventually Mr. Pearce, no criticism, it's just one of those things, but Mr. Pearce eventually called me. I'm sure Mr. Pearce will be able to confirm this, but it was about 6:30 on Friday. So it was after close of business. We had a discussion about the documents that have been sent over. I was keen not to forward that.
Can I interject here? I hear what you say, and I'm sure you've had problems. Could you please present your case?
Very well. I just want to finish by saying that the documents I sent bounced back, and I wasn't made aware of that until half an hour before the hearing. So they went into our junk and spam email. So I'm just don't want that to reflect at all on the applicant, but I won't dwell on it any further. I will turn to the presentation of the application.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Which is the application for the grant of a premises license. You'll see the application itself, and most pertinently the hours that have been applied for. They are different from the license that subsists at the moment, and do represent an extension to what presently exists on the current license. I would just add, I've had further discussions with my client this morning. These things can often move, and I'm very conscious about, and obviously this is as a consequence of the discussions I had particularly with the police on Friday, but there's a further, it's not in any way complicated, amendment to the application, which is simply this. The hours applied for licensable activities will be amended from 1 a.m. to midnight. Okay, so and that's simply a recognition, and following the conversations that I've had with responsible authorities, it's simply a recognition that these premises want to demonstrate to responsible authorities, to local residents, that they can operate with a midnight license with a view down the line, sometime in the future, some significant time in the future, to maybe revisiting that. But it's recognised that there is a significant difference between midnight and 1 a.m. There's no other amendments to the application, in that the operating schedule that is contained at page 23 and 24 of your agenda pack, and the proposed conditions remain the same as they were prior to this hearing. And you'll note from the proposed conditions that these are targeted at the representations that have been made by responsible authorities. So firstly, they deal with noise from the premises and from the terrace, both in terms of amplified music and members of the public or patrons. So there are conditions that relate to deploying appropriate numbers of door staff and restricting the numbers of people outside, ensuring that noise or vibration from the premises, so that both relates to amplified music and from people talking from the premises, will not cause a nuisance. And that word nuisance then encompasses statutory and public nuisance. In addition to that, they'll also undertake, sorry, forgive me, that causes no nuisance to nearby residential properties. So any residential properties nearby won't be affected by nuisance. That's a condition on the licence. You've also got a condition there at number 4 within those proposed conditions, that there'll be monitoring levels at the nearest residential noise sensitive locations, and a record will be kept of that. And so what you have there is a number of conditions that address that, and if there is any nuisance caused to any residential properties emanating from the premises, well, that's a breach of a condition which is capable of an offence under Section 136 of the Licensing Act. But there's a further layer in addition, which is being proposed by the the applicant, I should say, namely that the regulated entertainment, that is to say, amplified music after, which your licensing officers helpfully set out, after 2300 hours, is only available between the May bank holiday weekend and the August bank holiday Monday. So effectively, give or take, 3 months of the year, June, July, and August, there or thereabouts. And so we're talking about a relatively limited period. And now, as I say, only for an extra hour. So as your licensing officers quite rightly pointed out, any licensed premise, any workplace is exempt from the requirements, subject to there being less than 500 people present for an authorisation for regulating the same up to 11 p.m. And so therefore this application as it stands now is for an hour, not two, on top of that, simply in terms of the external areas for a 3 month period there or thereabouts of the year. Furthermore, there are conditions, I won't read them out verbatim, but at 3 and 5 that deal with litter and the impose a requirement upon the premises to take proactive and reactive steps to address issues in relation to litter. You'll also see issues have been raised around public safety, but an annual fire risk assessment is, as well as being a legal requirement, is a requirement for it to be kept on the premises and for a capacity figure to be available therein. There is also 3 conditions relating to SIA, which again is a useful tool to deploy in relation to controlling people outside in particular, and included in that is a requirement that at least 2 SIA registered doormen after 9 o'clock on Thursday, Friday and Saturday are deployed whenever the premises are open. So there are a number of conditions there that I would submit address the concerns. You then have a further condition number 6, which is the operational dispersals policy, which is then provided for at pages 3 and 4 within the supporting documents. And so that is the flavour, the overall overarching structure or framework of the application as it now stands. And I would submit some significantly more onerous and scaled back application. I should add there's one other slight amendment actually, which is simply this. Environmental Health made reference to concerns around New Year's Eve being effectively a 36-hour period from within the non-standard timings, and I've taken instructions on that. My client's not particularly desperate to retain that within the application and understands the concern that there is there. So again, that can be struck from the application. It's a very minor amendment, but so effectively New Year's Eve will be subject to the same hours as the rest of the year. Environmental health, I'll just turn to the responsible authorities briefly, the representations that they've made. Environmental health has made reference to no off sales after 2300. Well, that is part and parcel of the operating schedule contained at page 23 in any event. So it may be that was overlooked in some way. My client obviously had some, and it's not straightforward for any of us at the moment. I think this morning has been testament to that. And obviously the conferences I've had with my client, I would much prefer to having them face to face and at the premises, and that's not as easy at the moment as it otherwise would be. But certainly I've had a number of discussions with them, and one of the themes that they keep returning to, they feel very passionately about, is that the noise that's been made reference to is it's not. They don't believe it's fair in any way that it's wholly attributed to them, it's a busy. The Esplanade's a busy part of Ryde, busy part of the Isle of Wight. Within the photographs that I've submitted, just invite you to turn to pages 9. And of course, you'll all be well familiar with all of this, of course, but it's right that I illustrate it to you. Pages 9, 10, 11, and 12 in particular all demonstrate the area at the front, immediately in front of the Harbour House, is an area that is busy in any event. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty. Lots of people fish from the front there. Lots of tourists visit it. So, yes, neighbours have commented on issues around noise, but my client feels very strongly that a significant number of those issues are attributable to members of the public and who aren't attending their premises and nor have attended their premises during the course of that particular day. Obviously, you've got the concerns that environmental health have raised in terms of an absence of dispersals policy and targeted conditions. Well, I would hope, at the very least, whatever their feelings are in relation to the application, they would acknowledge that the conditions certainly add a further layer of protection to this particular application. So certainly the main focus, given that the majority of the conditions, majority of the concerns do relate to nuisance, if you include antisocial behaviour within that, then certainly I feel that the concerns that have been raised by environmental health within their representation have been purposefully addressed by the applicant in the course of the last week. In terms of Hampshire Constabulary, my client takes perhaps more issue with some of the things that have been asserted there. First of all, what we haven't got, and my client is adamant on this, you haven't got any arrests in connection with these premises, you haven't got any paramedics being called out, you haven't got any crime that is directly attributable to the premises. There is some suggestion that there's some sort of vendetta against the premises, which is flatly denied by the applicant. In fact, she says to me that there's been a number of issues in relation to vandalism in the area for a number of years, and in stating that, if I could invite you to turn, if I may, to pages 5 and 6 within the supplemental and supporting documents that I've sent through. I mean, these incidents of vandalism here that in relation to plant pots, this is from 2 years ago. And my client has also invited me to ask you to just consider the photograph at 7, which occurred 2 weeks ago and still hasn't been cleared up. So there are ongoing issues around vandalism in the area, and they don't think it's right, neither the DPS nor the licence holder thinks it's right or it's fair that they're a victim of crime. Somebody has vandalised their window, smashed a beer keg through it, and it's not right that an inference is drawn from that. There's some sort of ill feeling towards the premises, and so I would just invite you to put that to one side when making your deliberations. Another issue that my client has with the Hampshire Constabulary's representations is some suggestion that these premises are in some way operating in a manner that's down market, and in stating that, they've sent some pictures to me over the course of the weekend, which hopefully demonstrate to you. So if I can just ask you to turn to page 15 within the photographs. That's of the outdoor terrace. You can see it's big space. One of the issues that the premises has, of course, at the moment, although this isn't an overwhelming consideration for you, but one of the issues that the premises has at the moment is one of social distancing. You'll note from page 18 in the photographs, supplemental documents, you can see there that is a photograph of the inside of the premises, and with social distancing, it's not very big, with social distancing the numbers for people to sit safely in there are down to 18, 1/8, which is a somewhat different figure from the 45 stated within the Hampshire Constabulary representations, whereas outside 80 people can safely sit. And so that's not really a consideration for you today, because as your licensing officer has said, that COVID regulations operate alongside but extraneous to considerations under the Licensing Act. But it's right to point that out to you. So if I just ask you, page 15 and 16 both show, and 17 in fact, show the outside of the premises. You can see with seating safely spaced apart. You then have at 18 a photograph of the inside of the premises, and you can see it's relatively small, and that's as a consequence the social distancing measures they've made is a limiting factor. Page 19 is a not very nice looking photograph of a plate of food, and at page 20 is a copy of the wine menu, and that's just to demonstrate to you that any suggestion that this is a cheap and cheerful premise is simply wide of the mark. And my client took particular umbrage to that. She's trying to run a very nice, relatively exclusive to an extent establishment here, and there's certainly no question she's putting any responsible drink promotions on or selling products too cheaply, and you can see that from the wine list. It's not in any way what one would describe as a down market premises, and so the suggestion that she's just selling mass-produced products is simply not correct. One other issue in relation to the police representations, which is welcomed by the applicant, is an acknowledgement that there has been a decrease in the number of incidents. It's right to say at the outset that when restrictions were lifted, and we all remember that, the weather was exceptional at the time, and it's right to say that these premises, who were lawfully operating takeaway business at the time, this business, as many businesses did, struggled to cope with the sudden influx of people, and that was reflected in a spike in the number of incidents in association with the premises that have been set out in the police log. But it's also right to say, within that, it's contained at page 42 in the agenda pack, within that chronology, you have, you can see 21 incidents. They start on the 23rd of May, which was as I recall, the bank holiday weekend, and they end on the 14th of August. However, 3 of those, 19, 20 and 21, the last 3 in time, are matters of criminal damage, which I would submit aren't directly related to the licensing objectives. The first 17 of those span a give or take 3.5 week period when I say that the restrictions have been lifted. But since, in fact, pubs have been allowed to reopen lawfully since the 4th of July, you actually don't have any incidents on that log, other than the one on the 30th of July. And so that's give or take a 3-month period, certainly a 3-month period from the last entry, number 17 on the 16th of June, over 3 months ago. And so what you actually have is a position where since premises of pubs and bars and restaurants, etc., have been in a position to lawfully reopen to members of the public in a way that's safe, then during that time you actually have a commendable record there. So I would just ask you to just give the premises an element of slack. I represent a large number of licensed premises up and down the country, and it's right to say that a number of them did struggle in many ways at the beginning, and we're all on a learning curve here. We're all, you know, the guidance is changing all the time, and I'm constantly having to recalibrate the advice I'm giving my clients, and I think it's incumbent upon us all to just try and work through this together as best we can. And so I would just invite you to place some significant weight on the position in the last 3 months when actually the premises have acted in a way that I would submit is commendable. And with that in mind, for completeness, I would just ask you then to look at the last pages of my, well, actually, it's not the last page. So it's the COVID risk assessment, because I had to break the document, because the document bounced back because it was too large. I've had to break it down into 3 different documents. And so that's it's contained after the dispersals policy. There's a COVID risk assessment that the premises has undertaken, and you can see there in particular towards the 4th page is particular reference to customers, what staff what steps the staff are required to take in terms of customers, in terms of temperature and all the things we expect. So the premises clearly has taken many steps to ensure the promotion of safety and health at the premises. And so you'll see from the report, I have to say it's an exceptionally well set out report. Your licensing officer can certainly, from my point of view, it's as good as one as I've seen this year. Very comprehensive, very fairly set out as well, and it essentially crystallises the nature of the representations into issues around antisocial behaviour and music and litter. And I would submit that the application, as it stands now, addresses those concerns much more purposefully and in a much more targeted way. It is a diminished application in terms of the hours that are being sought, but it is also an enhanced application in the sense of the conditions that are being offered, some of which significantly curtail the business and its operation in a way that addresses the concerns that have been raised by the people who made representations. And in saying that, it's right that I turn to other persons, or the persons have made representations, and just to say, as I always say in these circumstances, it's absolutely right that local residents get involved in this process. It's part of the democratic process. It's right that they've got a voice. And of course, any decision that you make is one that needs to balance out the legitimate commercial needs of a business against the concerns of the wider community. And in saying that, certainly my client doesn't recognise some of the comments that have been attributed to her in terms of telling people to move elsewhere. That's certainly not anything she recognises ever having said. And there'd be no reason for her to say that, because, quite frankly, she doesn't want to upset her neighbours. She wants to live in a situation where they all rub along and get along and work productively together. And so, and what evidence do you have of that? Well, the evidence you have, I guess, is that the application has been significantly amended to recognise those concerns and to effectively say, look, please give me a chance with this extra hour. If you do grant that extra hour, it will be significantly more onerous than with the existing licence. It will place significant burdens upon her and the business, particularly in terms of a condition around no noise emanating to noise-sensitive premises in the area, and obviously your licensing officer has alluded to Section 177A of the Licensing Act that regulated entertainment can be disapplied from a license even before 11 o'clock in circumstances where there's a review. And so the applicant is essentially saying, please give me an extra hour. I will work with the neighbours. I will work with responsible authorities. I will ensure that these conditions are complied with. And then we can revisit the position somewhere down the line. And so that's essentially, Chair, is the application.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. One
Thank
of
you.
your pictures, George Street, what is that to do with the application, is it?
It might be better if you ask Ms. Hyatt that question, Chair, and I'm sure.
No, I'm asking you, sir. You're representing.
Oh, forgive me. Right, forgive me. Well, it was. Sorry, forgive me. That was the one photograph I didn't make reference to, and that's the position with that is that my client. There's been reference in the police representations to refuse lying around, and also from the representation from another person. Forgive me, I'm just turning to it now. The gentleman who submitted the Mr. Beach, Richard Beach. Please hope I pronounced his name right. Was it Vetch? I don't know, but forgive me if I've got pronounced your name wrong. Just reference to refuse in the morning. And my client's position in relation to that is a common problem across that part of the Isle of Wight, particularly during holiday season, in that there's a lot of refuse generated generally, and that isn't normally collected until 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock the following morning. And so that isn't a problem that's just restricted to the Harbour House. It's a more generic problem in that part because the refuse isn't collected. So
thank you, Mr. Craig. I hear what you say.
Thank you.
I hear what you say, sir. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to ask Councillor Beston and Councillor Howe if they have any questions. I will then go on to Mr. Guard. You, sir, Mr. Craig, will have the opportunity to respond to those questions should you feel that though you wish to do so. I will take Mr. Howe first. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question referring to door stewards. I presume they were talking about having 2 stewards. Presumably that is the minimum amount of stewards they're going to have. If during the evening, I presume that if the numbers increase, would they be able to increase the number of stewards so that they can support the number of customers they might have during the evening, and then the increasing number of stewards during the evening?
Mr. Craig?
Well, certainly, yes. That figure is a minimum, and certainly, as required, that would be increased. I mean, what the premises don't want to do is if you grant this application, they don't want to be in front of the subcommittee, and so they will take whatever steps are required. And so that figure that has been provided is simply a minimum requirement. But clearly, if it's very busy out there, I have to say, I don't think 2 will be enough. If there are, I guess, 80 people outside, and I think you would probably need more than 2, in fact. But certainly 2. That is the bare minimum on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
So would they be able to access the door stewards at an instant time? So if more people turned up, would they be able to access these extra stewards?
That's a question I think my client, if you don't mind, is better placed to answer than I.
Okay.
Lee, do you want to just?
Yes, that's not a problem at all, because they're all linked to the stewards to all the pubs in Ryde. So the doorman we do use have always said if there is anything down here, but nothing as ever, we've got them on call all the time. They can get as many as they like because they're all linked.
So you're saying that if you found that you've got a large influx of people coming into your property, you would be able to instantly access more door stewards?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chairman. just referring back to the late representations that we received this morning, particularly the images of the broken planters. Can you confirm, sir, that they are not current photos?
Lee, you might want to.
Yeah, they're my photos I took because I've got businesses all along this the seafront. That was taken 2 or 3 years ago. That was repeated, ongoing for about 4 or 5 years. So I've stopped putting those plant pots outside to make it more attractive. The vandalism and ASBOs along here is you know, that's what we get as part of the ride. As I'm sure you are aware, that you've got a problem here with these youngsters misbehaving, and you know, there's not a lot we can do about it. Just keep mopping it up and picking it up and taking the expense itself. So it's not just because the Harbour House has come here. This has been happening for years. In fact, it's actually ceased. There's not. We've had 2 incidents this year. Last year we had 6, but it's ceased. And I think because it's creating, there is more light along here. It's pushing the young ASBOs away from this area. So I've not actually had nothing up the other end. You know, Pete's Pan end.
Okay,
Thank you, Lee Hyatt.
Sorry, Chair, can I just carry on, please?
Councillor Beston.
Yes, please, thank you. So as regards to the images of the rubbish that's stacked up, is that a current image?
That current image is from along the Esplanade opposite the bus station. There's a fish shop. I also took photos because there was questions about our rubbish, which is hidden off the road. That is on the path with a public walk. The bowling alley, the bowls, LA Bowl, they also have the same problem. You cannot get, if you've got a busy weekend, even the council bins are overflowing sometimes. If you've got a big influx, you've got the sun out, they're at the beaches, you're gonna get excess rubbish. So, you know, ours is contained as much as we can, but obviously Paul's the fish can't contain it. We do. You get the bin men out when you can. They come on a Monday morning, but unfortunately, sometimes we get an influx. You get a hot day, bang, they're all out, and that's a problem. That's you know, not only me, everybody gets it along the dry seafront because it's just you can't control how many people's going to come over in a given time. Especially this year with the numbers up, they've all been contained for the 6 weeks holiday, and the numbers have just been a lot higher than they normally are.
Okay,
Mr. Beston.
Yes, please, Chair. I'm just reading the late representation. I've taken an extract from that, and I'd just like an explanation on how you will actually implement this. And it says transgressors will not be welcomed back to Harbour House in the future. So can you just tell me what exactly does that mean, and how will you implement that particular policy?
Well, if we do get rowdy people, then we've tried to join Pub Watch because we've never had the numbers we had because of the COVID, the bar thing. In the early days, it got very busy quickly. We've never needed to be on that Pub Watch. We couldn't access it because they were shut down. We have emailed and we've still not heard back. Carl's been along to see the person and he keeps saying, in a minute, in a minute, in a minute. Luckily, our doormen have pointed out some characters that we've prevented from coming in. But yeah,
can I just interrupt? On the latest government restrictions that were put in place on Monday, down to numbers of 6, the Pub Watch meeting was due to go ahead on that day. However, we couldn't be invited to it because it holds more than 6 people at a meeting. So that meeting was cancelled. It's been very difficult to become part of that organisation. However, we will continue to try to do that.
Councillor Beston.
No, that's it for the moment, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Guard, do you have any comments at this point you wish to make?
Thank you, Chairman. An observation from me, and I'll turn to Mr. Craig to correct me if I'm wrong. I hope that I'm not. The application that the committee now have for consideration, is changed from that in the paperwork, and so we are now the application seeks no licensable activity beyond midnight on any day, and New Year's Eve is struck from the application. So the additional hours on New Year's Eve are struck from the application. So whichever day that happens to fall on under this licence, whichever day the New Year's Eve happens to fall on, it will run subject to the hours for that day. And so I think would be helpful to the committee to have any representations from those yet to speak, specifically in relation to that amended licence.
Yes, and just to confirm that your understanding is correct.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gard. Just one added question from myself before I move forward. I noticed from earlier pictures that were sent to me that a lot of the stuff on the tables outside the premise were from the previous night. In other words, they weren't cleared off overnight and they were left overnight. Could you give me, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mr. Craig?
Well, again, it's probably best for my client because she was there and she's operating the premises. Responds to that. Lee, if you want to just respond to that.
Lee Hyatt, could you respond to that for me, please?
DPS Carl was there that night, so.
Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Carl Harding, you are going to be the responsible person for risk assessments. That is a big risk. Pictures don't lie, and I'm concerned that that isn't the first time that's been seen. Could you give a reason for that?
Yeah, the rubbish in those pictures is plastic, is referred to as glass, which is not the case.
No, I hear what you say, and I understand that. I accept the fact it's plastic and not glass. Nevertheless, you should clear down your service before you close the premise. I'm giving you a question. Is this something you do?
Yes, that is always the case. That is always done. Obviously, on a very busy night, all the staff are instructed to do that. I can only assume on this occasion that was missed.
Let's hope.
Personally, I'll clear up the front of the building along the esplanade here, which used to have I assume, a council dust cart that used to drive along here and sweep up the whole. That doesn't take place anymore. I'm constantly cleaning up this area myself. That's another ongoing problem, again, which is not due to Harbour House customers.
Okay, but I can only go on what my eyes see on the pictures and the tables outside your premise.
Hello, Chair, can you hear me?
Yes,
I can indeed.
Yeah, it's Duncan Craig. May I just make this point on behalf of the applicant that yes, you have a photograph there, but it's clear from the representations of other persons that they are monitoring these premises with some regularity, and what you don't have is a catalogue of examples in relation to that. So that's the first point I would make, and the second point that I would make is what you don't presently have on the licence is any conditions addressing matters around litter and waste, and actually you have that now. So what it does is it focuses the mind of the licence holder and the DPS of what their requirements are, and if they fail to comply with that, then clearly there are sanctions that can follow from that, both in terms of a review of the licence or even a prosecution under section 136. So that's one of the reasons why the licence holder, the applicant, I should say, has agreed to have those conditions on there, so that everybody.
Yeah, I would have preferred my mind to have been focused prior to these late representations. However, I tend to move forward. I will invite the relevant authorities to speak. I'm going to invite you in order. So, Matthew Northard, would you like to speak for environmental health first, please? Matthew, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning to you again. Would you like to present your case?
Yes, thank you. So, I remind everyone, I'm Matt Northard, Senior Environmental Health Practitioner representing environmental health of the Isle of Wight Council, responsible for prevention of public nuisance and public safety. Okay, so with regards to my environmental health representations. We're concerned over noise from people and music noise causing sleep disturbance after 2300 hours, 11 o'clock, to those residential properties on the Esplanade, which are 100 metres away. The application, if permitted, would provide a licence that would allow large numbers on the patio and loud music, for example, a DJ.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. The external patio area would not need to be full of people to cause disturbance, as disturbance could be caused by smaller numbers to the residential properties. It doesn't have to be full. So restrictions under COVID during the COVID situation wouldn't necessarily prevent public nuisance. Regulated recorded music entertainment would cause sleep disturbance. Background music at a level where you wouldn't have to raise your voice, but close to that point, that could still be audible in those residential properties and give rise to complaints and cause sleep disturbance. So just to be clear, Environmental Health have not made these comments as a result of any issues that have happened in the past, and particularly what went on in June, people having takeaways from the premises and congregating on the Esplanade area. Okay, we'd be concerned and make the same comments if this application had been for a new premises. It hadn't been in operation right now. Okay, so Environmental Health do not support the use of that outdoor area after 2300 hours. With regards to the late proposals from Duncan Craig and the applicant, there is nothing put forward that is helpful in resolving my concerns. Again, EHA are not supportive of the use of that outdoor area after 2300 hours. I can go through the proposed conditions and make comments on that if you wish, Mr. Chairman.
Those that you feel relevant, please.
Okay.
I'm not hearing you.
Yes, sorry, I'm just so point 2 of the proposed conditions sent this morning. It says noise and vibration shall not emanate from the premises so as to cause nuisance to nearby residential properties. Well, firstly, it's not noise and vibration related to people or music or both. And then with regards to the word nuisance, it's quite a complex to determine what is nuisance, and the applicant, the people running the premises, needs to have a very specific condition, specific wording to be able to monitor at the time on the night, so to know how to comply. And there's both the regulators and also the people running the premises are clear what is required. That's I've made it. I'm going through the other points, and I've made other comments really, but that's the main one.
No, that's fine, Mr. Norwood.
Thank you. And then yeah, so the further proposal this morning of closure at midnight. Yes, it would reduce the impact. Obviously, it's an hour less than 1 o'clock, but it's still not sufficient to prevent public nuisance, in my opinion. Mr. Chairman, there's 3 points raised by Duncan Craig. I just need to just go through. He mentioned about the New Year's Eve point, and I'm not aware. I made a comment over that about New Year's Eve. I need to understand what that was, what he was referring to there. He was talking about the noise complaints, and that they weren't always attributed to them, and it was other people in the area. But my concerns with this application are not really about daytime noise, before 11 o'clock. It really is potential for noise sleep disturbance after 11 o'clock affecting those residential properties. In regards to the dispersal policy, I've made some comments, and it does need some further work to it. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I take it your view hasn't changed from your closing remarks with taking into account the bundle that was put before us first thing this morning?
I confirm, Chairman, that my comments haven't changed in light of what was sent this morning. No.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beston, do you have any questions?
For Mr. Northard?
Yes, sorry, Councillor Beston. Mr. Northard, yes.
No, Chairman.
Councillor Howell? Councillor Howard, do you have any questions for Mr. Northwood?
I'm just interested to know about this public nuisance, not noise. The recommendations that he's put forward, does he consider that would solve the problem of the complaints as far as music goes, if it's kept down to these times that he recommends?
Mr. Northard.
With regards to music after 11 o'clock, there needs to be a more specific condition that's clear what has been trying to achieve for both the regulators and also the premises license holder. So regulated music entertainment in itself out there after 11 o'clock, we do not support. So we would require, if they were permitted to have music outside, we would need a specific condition, potentially something to the extent of like barely audible at the boundary of the residential properties after 11.
Thank you, Mr. Northard. Councillor Howe, is that satisfactory to you?
Yes, thank you,
Does that
Chairman.
answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I just
Before I go
interject there,
forward,
just to be clear?
Sorry, Claire.
Apology. Can I just step in there to be clear? So we're talking use of the outdoor area. I understand is proposed in relation to entertainment. Is that what you're talking about? Just to be clear, before 11 o'clock at night, as proposed at the moment, the entertainment it isn't a regulated entertainment, so there's no conditions that could be applied in relation to that. The only proposal at the moment that in the application was the proposal for recorded music outdoors Thursday to Saturday until 1 in the morning. But I understand that has since been withdrawn by the applicant, and the proposal remains now to be only until midnight.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that point about entertainment outside.
That's a very valid point, Thomas. Thank you very much. Mr. Gard, do you have any comments at this point of Mr. Northard?
No, thank you, Chairman. That last clarification has helped me somewhat. So no, nothing from me at this stage.
Thank you very much. I now move forward to PC Bradley. Good morning, Mr. Bradley, PC.
Good morning, Chairman. PC Bradley is on holiday. It's PC Pierce here.
Good morning, PC Pierce. I've got three PCs here. Are you going to speak for Mr. PC Bradley and PC Ainsworth? Or are you just going to speak for yourself and PC Bradley?
Speak for all, Chairman.
You speak for all. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. PC Pierce, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, you'll appreciate the technical difficulties. They don't appear to be from our end. We've been connecting very well with Teams meetings and other hearings elsewhere in the county. Not sure what's going on there, but we are where we are, as you say in your words. Yeah, starting off, the COVID-19 is a public health matter. And as we'll all know, public health are responsible authorities under the Licensing Act. So from our perspective, public health matters are appropriate for you to consider and take into account today. I can say personally, I've been at 2 recent hearings in the last week where COVID-19 matters have been primary factors of the discussion. So I'll make my submissions with that in mind, and obviously when you sit down to consider, you can take your legal advice on that. Okay. Yeah. So we've all heard the 11th hour submissions by the applicant. Originally the effectively this is a premises extension of a premises license. It was most notably for a 2-hour extension from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock. And now it's going to be on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. And now that's going to be until 1 o'clock with a close time. So drinking up time, it will be 1:30 because last drinks at 1 o'clock to midnight, and leaving time is midnight. So that's the time you need to work from. Also take on board the 11th hour sort of withdrawal of the New Year's Eve joining to New Year's Day. So moving forward, hopefully you've all had an opportunity to read through PC Bradley's written representation and its supporting documents. You'll be pleased to know that I don't intend to repeat that today, blow by blow. You will have seen the chronology of events also provided by PC Bradley regarding associated antisocial behaviour, drunkenness and COVID-19 gathering issues outside the premises. I appreciate Mr. Craig has also made comment on that. I'm sure you'll all appreciate that it takes time. It takes some time from the point of application, which was back on the 28th of July, to the police representation, which was on a month later, the 26th of August, to this hearing date. So we're kind of 2 months in the making. Now, whilst the pandemic has been consistent through that period, a lot has changed too. The subcommittee will need to be assessing the here and now risk, not where we were 2 months ago or even 2 weeks ago. We all know where we are here and now, unfortunately. We're on the brink of a second wave, a second surge of cases, with infection increasing significantly week on week. We've all seen and heard the TV and news. Now, when I was thinking about what to say at this hearing today, having picked up the case from PC Bradley in his absence, I pretty much came to the conclusion that I could sum up what is really important in one sentence, in one question, and that is, do you really want to support extending alcohol sales and music into the early hours during a second wave of the current pandemic? Do you really want to support and promote that? At the current time, with all that's going on, it does boil down to that question. And I would suggest that anything more that I or Mr. Craig may present further to you today is probably just background noise to that simple question. So do ask yourselves, is extending the hours, extending into later night drinking, suitable at the current time? What's the image you want for the Isle of Wight at this time? Is it cautioned and considered? I assume it is, because the alternative is taking a big risk at the worst possible time. Now, will approving this application result in increased intoxication and everything that comes with later night drinking, which is violence, crime, disorder, and inevitably the likelihood of virus spreading? More than likely, I would suggest. So we would say that the timing of this application is at best poor, at a time when everyone is trying to slow down the factors that accelerate the virus. Harbour House is seeking to expand its hours at the wrong end of the day, which seems to fly in the face of common sense. People get more drunk later into the night. People get closer to each other as they get more drunk. This is why many other premises are closing earlier than their permitted times during this pandemic. The police believe that the new premises licence at Harbour House should only be reflective of the hours of the previous premises licence, so 11 o'clock, not 1 o'clock or midnight. We think that's suitable and reasonable in terms of a terminal hour for licensable activities. As the business model changes from bistro to bar with music, we think the owners need to learn their trade before they leap into becoming a late night drinking venue. Sorry, I'll let whoever's whispering finish.
Whoever's talking in the background, you can be heard. Please don't.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And that's because the associated challenges at these hours are huge in normal times, let alone in a pandemic. People drinking up until the new time, which is going to be midnight, when the premises would close, is a very different beast to an hour or an hour and a half before. We're actually very surprised to receive this application to increase the hours at this time. The timing submitted is perhaps showing a little bit of naivety and a determination to push forward with it when everything says that it's not appropriate to do at the present time. So I would say in the nicest possible way to the applicant, go away, build the new business model earlier in the evening, prove yourselves, maybe apply for some temporary event notices to provide experience, reassurance and evidence of how well you're managing the customer base. But do all of this when we're not in the midst of a pandemic. It's the wrong time. Consequently, the police cannot be supportive at the present time. In normal times, there may be scope for agreement. There may be scope for agreement with appropriate conditions that would, of course, contain requirements for SIA staffing, amongst other things, which has, again, arrived late notice today. Ultimately, the decision today is for the subcommittee to make, and we accept your judgment. You have the opportunity to set out what expectations you have of licensed premises in general on the Isle of Wight during this pandemic period. Caution or risk, the choice is obviously yours. And the outcome of this case will also be an indicator to other premises who may feel that they would also like an equal share of late night trading. So if approved, this could start that ball rolling. Finally, whatever decision you make, please make sure that it puts public health at the heart of your considerations, because that's what's important to us all at the present time. So at this stage, that concludes the police input, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Very clear. Councillor Beston, do you have any questions to the police at this point?
No, Chairman, I don't. I'd just like to thank PC Pearce for his reasoned outline response.
Councillor Howe, any questions at this point?
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask whether the police do have many call-outs to this site or along the seawall in this area? And the other question is, do you think that alcohol that's being drunk in this area is not only alcohol that's being sent from this told that this premises is being brought into this premises from outside.
PC Jason, yes, could you reply?
Yes, Councillor. The call-outs list is on the list is on PC Bradley's documentation. I chose to not go through that piecemeal because I thought there was a bigger issue at stake. So you would need to get that information. I could find it for you. I have the paperwork in front of me, but it would be as per the documentation submitted. And I didn't quite get all of your last question, something about drinks. Are all drinks from outside connected? I think there's evidence within PC Bradley's submissions to suggest that the people that have been outside, and I totally take on board the point, because we're not here to defend one position. We're here to try to provide you with the facts. I take on board the point that the crowds outside have been during the period, in the main, not exclusively, but in the main, during the period prior to the full reopening of licensed premises on the 4th of July, when off sales only were available. I take that on board, and please bear in mind, I'm not sure what the announcement was at 11 o'clock or what the new announcement is going to be by the government, but we're kind of heading back in a bad direction, I think, for that. But I think there's evidence, in answer to your question, that some of the people outside certainly have been people that have been drinking drinks from the premises. I couldn't say if the premises just is a magnet for other people as well. It certainly seems to be a place that if they're not purchasing from the premises, there's a reason for people to hang around there as well.
My concern is that Chairman, that would it happen that people bringing their own drinks to the site, even though you restricted the amount of time that people are allowed to drink on these premises or in this area, that people carry on drinking if they bring their own drink and you've got no control over that?
Is that for me, Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the answer to that question is that if the presence of the premises being open is causing people other than its customers, and I say its customers, I'm talking about customers inside, customers on the patio area, customers standing outside on the promenade that have purchased off-sale drinks, if other people are coming along and wanting to hang around there, I would say that the presence of that premises is what is causing them to hang around there. There must be something, maybe it's the entertainment, I don't know. But we would certainly say the presence of that premises being open at that time is causing them to be in that place if there's a large cluster of people outside, but not elsewhere along the promenade. That would be common sense, I think.
Right.
Thank you very much.
That's fine.
Councillor Howe, are there any further questions?
No, thank you.
I didn't quite hear that, Councillor Howe, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dahl, do you have any comments at this point to the police?
Thank you, Chairman. Only an observation. I'll turn to my colleagues in the licensing authority to confirm this as part of the summing up. And I'm sure we might hear from Mr. Craig on this when he comes to sum up last of all. But the public health have made no representations on this licensing application. That's simply an observation from me. The promotion of public health isn't itself a licensing objective, and it remains open to the government to legislate to include that if they felt it was necessary to do so. And certainly I see the Local Government Association has indeed asked for additional powers relevant to COVID-19, which don't currently exist. It's simply an observation from my part on those 2 points. And so when we come to it, I'll be asking members to have regard to the points that Claire Thomas pointed out to you as part of the presentation, which are the bits that members can have regard to in relation to the licensing objectives and the statement of licensing policy and all representations that you hear today. And that's all from me at this stage, Chairman. Thank you.
Can I interject, Chairman, and clarify that?
Claire Thomas, please do.
So just to highlight, in paragraph 49, sorry, of my committee report, I did clarify references to the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing guidelines in place this year. All of this falls under health and safety at work legislation, and it's a public health matter, and there will be separate legislation to deal with that. What the Licensing Act 2003 deals with is public safety, not public health. Public safety is in relation to the general safety of the public, in terms of slips, trips, those sorts of things, and how the premises conduct themselves in terms of providing licensable activities and the impact that could have on public safety. It's not in relation to cleanliness, hygiene and health in general. That is outside the scope of the licensing objectives. So anything to do with COVID-19 is technically irrelevant as part of determining this license application, because it's not just about the temporary arrangements that are in place. This is about licensable activities in general. So, okay.
Thank you, Claire. I hear what you're saying. Thank you. Do you wish to respond to that, Mr. Gard? Or are you okay with that?
Was that to me, Chairman?
Mr. Gard.
Oh.
No, Chairman. No, that makes the point very clearly, and I have nothing to add.
Yeah, Mr. Winchcombe, do you have anything to add at this point, as what was said, before I go to the third parties? Mr. Winchcombe? You're muted, sir.
Can you hear me, Chair?
No. No, Kevin, I can't hear you. You're muted.
To say no.
Right, got you. I move forward now to the third parties. Brown, do you wish to speak?
Hello, Chair. Yes, my name's Bronwyn Hamilton Brown, and yes, I'd like to speak. Hello. There are a number of things I'd like to say, but first of all, I'd like to say that I'm the manager of Richmond House and one of the directors, and I represent a group of us. So there's Mr. Jarvis, Mr. Farrar, Mr. Mooney, Mrs. Rees, Mrs. O'Doherty, Mr. Marshall, and Mr. Parkinson, as well as myself. There are 15 flats here, and also I know that neighbours have found it problematic during the summer period. So first and foremost, I'd like to say right at the beginning, when lockdown was starting to ease in May and June, we found it intolerable. We found it miserable. We felt that actually the noise was just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. I couldn't sit outside in my own property. I couldn't open windows when we had that really hot spell of 33 degrees. I couldn't keep the door and the windows open because I couldn't bear the noise. It reverberated, and it also it just was a thorough nuisance. Whilst the music was loud and penetrating, and it was the type of music that you can't escape from, because it was a real boom boom sort of type of music. What was actually worse was the screaming and the screeching and the shouting from drunk and inebriated people. So, the music can be reduced, but the effect of people that are sort of in vast crowds congregating is just it's insurmountable, absolutely insurmountable. And as I say, this isn't just my experience. It was my family's experience. Contrary to something that actually the barrister said, What I would like to do is read you an email that I sent to Andrew Wheeler, if you don't mind. I don't know where Andrew Wheeler is in your organisation, but he works for the Isle of Wight Council. That is somebody that you know, isn't it? Obviously. So I'm going to read this through to you. As I say, I sent this on the 11th of August. So the 11th was a Tuesday, and relative to Monday of August. So thank you, Andrew. I have noticed the police pass by. At the risk of overwhelming you with this discomfort of myself, guests and neighbours, I wanted to tell you about last weekend. Bizarrely, the worst nights were Thursday, Sunday and Monday. I've managed to take videos and my son and daughter walked past last night at 11:45. Friday and Saturday were calm, harmonious, with people having a pleasant time. But last night, the drinking, a lock-in ? Outside, went on till at least midnight. There were 13 people drinking and raucous. The music didn't stop until 11:40, when the lights also went out. One girl was urinating, shielded by two others near the boats. The police slowly drove just after this time, so they would have seen the bar was still hosting people. There were fights, people congregating, shouting and arguing around midnight. However, if this is directly attributable to Harbour House, I cannot be certain. It appears that friends of the owners have been posting on Facebook, though this has now been removed, with comments aimed at me. He suggested that my neighbours and I move to Bembridge or Seaview if we don't like noise. He said the owners were aggravated by my visit to discuss the situation because they thought we were from the council, and that's why their attitude was as it was. If this is the way they treat the local authority, I feel for your staff as it wasn't pleasant or polite. Thank you again, your attentions are appreciated. Best wishes, Bronwyn. So the assertions that actually by the end of July that things had calmed down, that, as I say, was documented on the 11th of August. The reference to the meeting I had was a neighbour and I, Liz O'Doherty, who lives in one of the apartments here. We went over to see the applicant, and I'm used to discussing and having times where people are upset or sort of aggrieved, but my overall impression was that the couple that are with us today actually were far from conciliatory, and I did feel that they weren't capable of de-escalating problems. We went over there in a sort of magnanimous way to tell them really how we were suffering, and to find a way where we could mutually live together, where with them having a thriving business, me having a thriving business, and the residents here having a pleasant life. But unfortunately, we were met with aggression and confrontational comments, and it was pretty combative. There were references to, I mean, I don't know, and I hadn't met Councillor Whittle, but there were slurs to his character and he.
Excuse me, could you refrain from take those words back? Refrain from referring to Councillor Whittle or anyone in name, please.
Okay. Just saying that there were adverse comments about people, and we were recommended to move to Bembridge or to Seaview, and we were told in no uncertain terms that there was nothing we could do about it, and the season was short and they employed lots of people, and that was really the sum total of that particular meeting. So we went off, and we felt that it was absolutely not productive to try to enter in dialogue with them because we felt intimidated. So as I say, my feeling is that the time just after things were relaxed, when, as we know, there was sort of 60 to 80 people along that seafront, I couldn't cycle during the day with my grandson because there's such a congregation of people that were drunk and, you know, very ebullient really, and very cheerful, having a really lovely time. But, you know, it wasn't, I didn't think, you know, appropriate. So I feel that actually there seems to be a lack of responsibility from the owners and the applicants. And I think that there's, you know, for me, lack of trust going forward, and also from the other residents. I think it's really quite amusing that that the owners or the applicants are suggesting that actually that the noise wouldn't come from Harbour House. And yes, absolutely, you know, tourists do make noise, but we do tend to attract families here, families with young children, and we know they can be noisy. But to assert that perhaps they are accountable or attributable to the amount of noise that we hear, you know, the screeching, the screaming, and the drunken debauchery is little disingenuous. And to also say that perhaps fishermen is really quite is quite funny, really, given that actually fishing tends to be a sedentary and quiet occupation. So yeah, I think I've said what I wanted to say, and I think that as the policeman, Mr. Pearce, said, that, you know, I do feel that actually learning the trade to have a responsible establishment would be a much better thing to do, rather than to consider extending it, because, you know, I don't trust actually that the proprietors at the moment have the handle on things, and I don't think that they actually have taken on board what the pandemic means to everybody, and particularly to the Isle of Wight and to health and safety. So thank you for listening to me.
And Brian Brown, can I take it that you are speaking for the 15 as well?
I am, yes. Can I say my name's Bronwyn?
Sorry, Bronwyn, I've got you down as Bronwyn Brown, is that correct?
Bronwyn Hamilton Brown.
Bronwyn Hamilton Brown, I do beg your pardon.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I take it that you are speaking for the 15.
I am, yes.
Councillor Howard, do you have any questions of Bronwyn Hamilton Brown?
No, Chairman.
Councillor Beston, do you have any questions of Bronwyn Hamilton Brown?
No, Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Guard, have you any comments you wish to make or observations at this point?
Chairman, thank you. No questions. An observation that obviously we do not have a copy of the email that was referred to in the objectors' representations. That would be late evidence, but I don't doubt that the objector would say that it was simply them expanding on their original representation. So I would just ask members to attach such weight to that as they see fit, and obviously it is something submitted to you, you know, as a view on behalf of the objectors, and that's it at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Guard. We come to the point now where all parties sum up. This is done in a reverse order. So I'm going to ask Bronwyn Hamilton Brown, would she like to sum up on what she has said?
In summary, what I've said is that I've represented a group of people that reside and are directly, you know, we are faced. I mean, I can show you a photo here. You know, this is where the house is, so you can see where actually we live. Can you see that?
Not really, no.
Can you?
But I hear what you say, and we will take that into consideration. You are very local to the premise. You're now muted, madam.
Okay, sorry, it's because I moved my computer.
Okay, fine.
I'm just saying that, you know, actually that we didn't find that the applicants were responsive when we wanted to open a dialogue and to express our concerns. And, you know, even like last night, I could give you the every single track that was played last night and the music there. You the abidement of hours hasn't been kept, and the noise isn't actually just restricted to the music. It's also to the clientele, who I think that are not actually the type of clientele that were represented by the barrister.
Thank you very much, Browen Hamilton Brown. I now move on to the relevant authorities. I will take the police first, as it's in reverse order. Jason Pearce, would you like to sum up, please, PC?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So in summing up, I'd say keep it simple, keep this matter very simple, focus on the bigger picture, focus on what's important. I'd mention that public health are a responsible authority under the Licensing Act, and that other recent hearings have featured COVID-19 issues in addition to other factors, and these have been accepted as valid concerns. I can quote a hearing in Portsmouth last week and Gosport a week or so ago. I'd certainly like to see the legislation that states that COVID-19 issues must not and cannot be considered at licensing hearings. Doesn't make a lot of sense because your objective is to look after the public. The fact that public health haven't made a representation doesn't mean that the police representation in writing and my words today are not worthy. I suspect that during the representation period, COVID-19 was heading in the right direction, and now we're in a position where that's changed. Just finishing off, late night drinking and COVID-19 are never going to be a match made in heaven. One will fuel the other. That's simple mathematics. We would urge you to send out a clear message that it's not the time to extend licensable activity, and please retain the high standards set by the Isle of Wight to put their people's safety as the primary factor of their considerations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, PC Pearce. I now move on to environmental health. Matthew Northard, would you like to sum up, please?
Environmental health will support the use of the outdoor area after 2,300 hours. We believe music and people noise will give rise to public nuisance. We feel even smaller numbers could still cause disturbance on that outside area. With regards to any music played outside, there would need to be a specific condition controlling it. We have not made our comments. Our comments that haven't considered, do not consider COVID-19 restrictions, as other legislation deals with that. And also our comments do not looked at the past history of this premises, then past management in relation to our comments. We would treat this same if in a taken premises. Many thanks.
Thank you. I now move forward to the barrister. Duncan Craig, would you like to sum up for your clients, please?
Yeah, just to reiterate comments of your legal advisor and your licensing officer and that of environmental health, in that the whilst Mr. Pearce's comments are laudable, they are wrong in law for this reason. Any restrictions in relation to COVID are extraneous to the Licensing Act and actually, in a sense, override the Licensing Act. So, if, for example, there's another lockdown, well, whether somebody's got a premises license which authorises them to sell alcohol till midnight, 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, the point is that legislation will impose itself on the licence. And so, with respect, you're not here to consider any of that, because that is something that is being dealt with on a week-to-week and a day-to-day basis by Parliament. What you're dealing with here is this application, which is essentially, given what presently subsists, is an application for a further hour over and above what the premises currently benefits from, but with much further restrictions in place. It's right to say premises, whilst they had some issues around the end of lockdown, based on the police logs, you can see a clearly improving picture. there are a number of restrictions, as I've said, that relate specifically to public nuisance. It's for a very limited time period. It's only for 3 months of the year. The rest of the time, the licence will effectively be restricted to what it is now, but with further restrictions on, and particularly in relation to nuisance at local residential premises, numbers of door staff, as I say, the times of year that it's permitted. So, for all those reasons, I would submit this is a modest application to effectively extend the hours over what presently exists, but with much stricter, more rigid restrictions in place, which can be properly regulated by responsible authorities. And if the premises doesn't comply, then clearly there will be consequences that flow from that. So for all those reasons, I would invite you to grant the application. Thank you.
Duncan Craig, thank you for that summing up. I now move to my licensing officer, Claire Thomas. Would you please sum up?
Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me. Okay, so if I may clarify the situation with the public safety and public health and the COVID discussion that we've had. So paragraph 2.7 in the national guidance, I'll just read it out if that's okay. In fact, what I'll do, I will actually share my screen. Bear with me.
247.
No, it's actually here. So it's this paragraph here. So licence holders have a responsibility to ensure the safety of those using their premises as part of their duties under 2003 Act. This concerns the safety of people using the relevant premises rather than public health, which is addressed in that other legislation. Physical safety includes the prevention of accidents and injuries and other immediate harms that can result from alcohol consumption, such as unconscious or alcohol poisoning. Conditions relating to public safety may also promote the crime and disorder objective as noted above. There will of course be occasions when a public safety condition could incidentally benefit a person's health more generally, but it should not be the purpose of the condition, as this would be outside the licensing authority's powers by ultravirus under the 2003 Act. Conditions should not be imposed on a premises licence or club premises certificate which relate to cleanliness or hygiene. So essentially what the guidance goes on to talk about is how public health may, what they would look at is ambulance data, particularly in relation to the nighttime economy. So if there was a particular cluster of incidents from A&E in relation to particular premises, that would then initiate public health submitting representations in relation to a licence application if they had evidence based on their data to demonstrate that there is a public safety risk in relation to the sale of alcohol at premises. So that is how public health would generally get involved with a licence application if that became necessary. Like it says in the guidance there, it's more about sort of physical safety rather than the overall health of an individual. And as other people have stated, there is separate legislation that will by far supersede the Licensing Act, should that be necessary. So the committee need to be mindful of the current situation we find ourselves in, but it shouldn't necessarily influence their decision. The decision needs to be based on the proposed activities, the measures that have been put forward, and overall what is going to be the impact on the licensing objectives. So I hope that clarifies that matter. If I can just refer to what everyone has sort of summed up, if I may, just to highlight things. Obviously the applicant has stated put forward a slight reduction in their original proposals, and they've put conditions forward which have been circulated to all parties. Some of the measures they've put forward include things like SIA door supervision, litter bins in place to address the litter, that sort of thing. The committee have those conditions available to them to refer to that have been put forward, as well as the original measures that are in section M of the application form at appendix 1 of the committee report. Environmental health have raised concerns mostly about the use of the outside area and activities happening there. there has been suggestion of the outside area not being used after a certain time. The committee will need to be mindful of the activities that are proposed to be conducted outside, namely recorded music outside until midnight is currently still proposed. So they will need to consider whether they deem that to be acceptable or not when they determine the hours under this licence application. In relation to police concerns, they've referred to a change in the overall business model that hasn't been tested at this point, and based on the concerns that have been raised over the conduct of the premises in recent months, they are particularly concerned about the effect on the licensing objectives of this change. I think it's important to highlight, obviously I've discussed the COVID situation, how that does come under a public health matter. I think ultimately the timing of this, the concern is that given that there has been concerns so recently, is it the best time to then be extending the licence hours? And that is something the committee do need to consider, because there have been concerns raised in the past few months. So is it the best time to increase the scope of the licence? Residents have highlighted their concerns, which largely relate to noise from music, noise from customers in the area, and despite trying to address these informally, they feel that hasn't addressed those problems. If I can also just highlight to the committee that there is a current licence in place for these premises. What that means is that this is not a variation application. So to reject the application in its entirety possibly would not be a proportionate response to the concerns raised, because there is already a licence in force, and what the committee would be saying by doing that is activities would impact on the licensing objectives so far as there shouldn't be a licence in place. Well, there already exists a licence, so that decision would be highly likely to be challenged. So, you know, rejecting the licence might be quite a disproportionate response in these circumstances. Equally, with the concerns raised, to grant the licence as per the proposed application possibly not be appropriate, and could be appealed by those who've submitted representations. The committee obviously are aware of several suggestions that have been put forward in terms of modifying the hours and modifying the conditions. They will need to ensure that their conditions, any conditions and modifications they make to the licence, are proportionate to the concerns raised, and that they actually do address the concerns that have been raised. They shouldn't look to attach conditions just because they seem like a good idea, for example. So obviously just to make the committee aware of that. If I can just remind the committee of the matters they need to take into consideration. So in determining the application, they need to do so with a view to promoting the licensing objectives in the overall interest of the local community. So you need to give weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives that the applicant has put forward, the representations that have been put forward by all parties, the national guidance, and our own statement of licensing policy. Just to remind you of the licensing objectives, they are the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. And the options available to you today are to grant the licence as per the application, to grant the licence with modifications such as reducing hours or activities, and or any additional conditions as deemed proportionate by the committee, or you can reject the application in its entirety, in which case the current licence for the premises will remain in force unless it is surrendered or a review is sought by a responsible authority or other person, which results in modifications to that licence or even its revocation or suspension. Okay.
Thank you, Claire Thomas, for your very decisive and very informative report and summing up. We now come to the part of the hearing where we will go in private. So I would advise you that we've heard the information, and the committee will now go into private session to deliberate their decision, and will return shortly. Thank you, and we will see you soon. It's going down. Are we live? We're live. Apologies for the time. I'd like to welcome you all back, to all parties, and the decision will be read out by my legal advisor, Mr. Ben Clark. Ben Gard, I do beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman.
Ben,
in respect of the licensing subcommittee on Monday, the 21st of September 2020. In respect of an application for a premises licence for Harbour House, Esplanade Ride, Isle of Wight, before the chairman, Charles Chapman, councillors Beston and councillor Howe. Upon receiving the report of the licensing section, oral and written evidence from the applicant, responsible authorities and other persons, and having regard to the guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Isle of Wight Council's statement of licensing policy, the subcommittee hereby grants the licence in accordance with the application, subject to the conditions proposed by the applicant within the operating schedule, and also subject to the mandatory conditions specified in the Licensing Act 2003, but modified to such an extent as members have considered proportionate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, namely by requiring the following: an amendment to the operating schedule to include the following finishing times. In respect of recorded music indoors, Thursday to Saturday, 23:30 hours. In respect of late night refreshment, Thursday to Saturday, 23:30 hours. In respect of sale of alcohol supplied for consumption on and off premises, Thursday to Saturday, 23:30 hours, with off sales until 2300 hours. The removal of non-standard timings for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The inclusion of the conditions submitted on behalf of the applicant, but varied as follows: the deletion of conditions 5 through to 9. And replacement with the following: litter bins will be placed outside the premises in positions agreed in writing with the licensing authority, and will be maintained and emptied regularly, and in any case not less than once per trading day, to prevent accumulations in the street or litter being blown away from the premises. The premises shall adopt and at all times shall comply with an operational dispersal policy, which shall be submitted to and agreed in writing with the local licensing authority. At least 2 SIA registered door supervisors shall be present from 2100 hours on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and shall remain on the premises until the time of closure. Such door supervisors shall remain outside the premises until the last customer has left the premises. The number of supervisors in addition to shall be determined by the licence holder, taking into account such factors as the nature and duration of licence activity proposed, the number, age and character of persons likely to attend, and any known risks to impact on the motion of the licensing objectives. The licence holder shall make a written record of the number of supervisors to be engaged and the factors taken into account by the licence holder.
Ben, you're breaking
We're
up,
not getting
Ben.
any of your sound.
Ben, the last 2 pages were breaking up, Ben. Could you go back over that again, please? Is that okay with you, Claire Thomas? I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Do we get to at least 2 SIA registered door supervisors? Is that where we got to?
We were clear on that, yes, I think. Yes, we was.
Yes. At least 2 SIA registered door supervisors shall be present from 2100 hours on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and shall remain on the premises until the time of closure. Such door supervisors shall remain outside the premises until the last customer has left the premises. The number of door supervisors in addition to 2 to be engaged shall be determined by the licence holder, taking into account such factors as the nature and duration of the licensable activities proposed, the number, age and character of persons likely to attend, and any known risks impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives. Licence holder
Breaking up
shall
again,
make
Ben.
a written record of the number of door supervisors.
Mr. Card, you're breaking up again.
If you turn your video off, then it might help.
I wonder if I could disconnect and reconnect.
I think if you just turn your video off, Ben, it'll probably help with the connection.
My apologies, Chair. I'm back. I'm now trying without video connection, so I hope that this is going to work. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now, Ben. Can everybody hear Mr. Guard? I take it you can. I think if you take it back to the last
we were back on
paragraph-
SIA registered door supervisors. I seem to be unable to get that condition out without the connection
That's right,
disappearing.
yeah.
So let's hope we can do it this time.
Okay.
At least two SIA registered door supervisors shall be present from 2100 hours on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and shall remain on the premises until the time of closure. Such door supervisors shall remain outside the premises until the last customer has left the premises. The number of door supervisors in addition to 2 to be engaged shall be determined by the licence holder, taking into account such factors as the nature and duration of licensable activities proposed, the number, age and character of persons likely to attend, and any known risks to impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives. The licence holder shall make a written record of the number of door supervisors to be engaged and the factors taken into account by the licence holder. Any such record shall be produced to a police officer or authorised officer of the local authority on reasonable request. Door supervisors shall wear clothing or other identification in accordance with that which has been agreed with the licensing authority in writing, so they can be easily and clearly identifiable to the public and on CCTV. The replacement of condition 11 with the following. The premises shall only provide regulated entertainment from the external area between the Thursday immediately before the early May bank holiday weekend to the late summer bank holiday weekend at the end of August. The deletion of condition 2 and replacement with the following. Noise or vibration emanating from music shall be no more than barely audible at the nearest residential premises. The deletion of condition 1. The inclusion of the following additional conditions. No beverages are permitted to be removed from the premises after 2300 hours. Persons are not permitted to remain on the premises after midnight. The outside area shown on the plan accompanying the application shall be exclusively used for smokers after 2300 hours. No consumption of alcohol or other refreshments shall be allowed in this outside area of the premises after 2300 hours. No licensable activities are permitted under this licence until a noise management plan has been submitted to and agreed in writing with the local licensing authority, and once approved, the plan and any subsequent approved version of the plan is adhered to at all times. Any changes of circumstances in relation to noise output from the premises and its control must be reflected in the noise management plan, and a written request for an amendment must be submitted to the local licensing authority for further approval. The noise management plan shall be reviewed at any time upon request from the local licensing authority and resubmitted for approval. The noise management plan shall include as a minimum written details of the following information: the hours of operation, any imposed planning licensing conditions controlling noise and disturbance, who will be responsible for noise control and who makes decisions regarding action to be taken, physical and managerial noise control processes and procedures, and how non-compliance will be addressed. Details of any community liaison, how complaints are processed, i.e. how will they be recorded, investigated and actioned. Details of how when the noise management plan will be reviewed on regular basis. Policy procedure in relation to the dispersal of customers. The number of people permitted in the outside area of the premises and any restrictions regarding the use of this area. The number of people permitted in the outside area shall be limited in accordance with an assessment carried out by the licence holder and approved with the licensing authority. A copy of all public nuisance complaints received shall be recorded in a logbook containing the time of the complaint, date, complainant's name and address where provided, along with the action taken by the responsible person to deal with the complaint, including the date and time of the action's completion. The logbook shall at all times be available for inspection by an authorised officer of the licensing authority and in any event within 24 hours of a request. Prominent, clear and legible notices shall be displayed at all exits requesting customers to respect the needs of local residents by leaving the premises and the area quietly. Prominent, clear and legible notices will be displayed with regard to the correct disposal of litter. The outdoor seating area shall be clearly defined by a barrier system. The purpose of this system is to prevent easy access or egress to or from the area by anywhere other than the designated entry-exit points. The barrier must be sufficiently robust to accomplish the task. A CCTV system shall be installed, maintained and must be in operation at all times that the premises are open to the public. Recorded images must be of sufficient clarity to allow personal identification. Display the correct time and date of the recording, which shall be checked regularly for accuracy, taking account of GMT and BST. Provide coverage of every public entrance and exit, every area where alcohol is sold or displayed for sale, and any other location deemed appropriate by the police or licensing authority. Shall be retained for a period of at least 31 days. Shall be produced for a police officer or a responsible officer of the local authority to review on request, and shall be exported to removable media, e.g. CD, DVD or USB device if requested by a police officer or responsible officer of the local authority. A member of staff capable of operating the CCTV system shall be present at all times the premises are open to the public and have access to the system to enable images to be reviewed and or produced upon request. No person will be permitted to take or remove alcoholic or other drinks from the premises in open glass containers. All persons engaged in the sale of alcohol shall receive training or instruction to prevent the sale to anyone who is drunk or apparently under the age of 18 years. Such training will also include the details of the premises licence as well as its conditions. Staff members shall receive such training on induction, also at intervals not greater than 1 year apart. A record shall be made of the date the training or instruction was delivered, its content and the names of the members of staff who received it. The record shall be produced to a police officer or an authorised officer from the local authority on reasonable request. A written record shall be made of every incident of crime or disorder taking place on the premises, to include any action taken by staff. Every entry in the record shall be signed and dated by the person making it. This record shall be produced to a police officer or an authorised officer of the local authority on reasonable request. A written record shall be made of every refusal to sell alcohol to a person who is drunk or apparently aged under 18 years. Each entry shall be signed and dated by the person making it. The record shall be checked and countersigned by the designated premises supervisor on at least a weekly basis and shall be produced to a police officer or authorised officer of the local authority on reasonable request. And the Challenge 25 scheme will be adopted at the point of the sale of alcohol. And the subcommittee have applied those conditions, having considered the representations. The subcommittee consider that the amendments and conditions are proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, and in particular the promotion of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance, as per the submissions from responsible authorities and objectives and objectors. In reaching the above decision, the subcommittee have had regard to the Human Rights Act 1998, and in particular Article 1 of the First Protocol, Article 8 and Article 6. The subcommittee consider this decision is proportionate and appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives under the Licensing Act 2003 and in accordance with the Section 182 guidance and the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy. There is a right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court if anyone is dissatisfied with this decision, and any appeal must be made within 21 days of the date of notification. Chairman, I believe that is your decision, and I'll be forwarding that, Chairman, for your signature to the committee clerk in due course.
I now have that, Mr. Guard, and I will sign that now. That has now been signed. Could I thank my officers and back office staff for their forbearance and their work put in to get this meeting back online again. And I thank everybody who attended, and I wish those who have a journey home a safe one, and those who are at home have a best day. Thank you very much for your attendance, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman.
Hi.